It's a
I'm excited to cover the first one.
Yeah, first one's a unique one. You know what? I take that back. The first one isn't a unique one.
No, it actually
it's
isn't.
More of the same, I guess.
Headline could read: conservative business owner also happens to peddle in sex work. You know,
and it's
not
this
that
thing.
he's doing. Not that he's
no,
doing
it's not.
sex work.
He owns and runs massage parlors that have been found to be, or allegedly, I don't know, whatever level of qualifications we're supposed to put on there, but is
the
doing
evidence
more
in
than
this
just
article
massages.
is pretty solid.
Yeah, no, I'm a big believer sex work is work, right? We've talked about this before. I have zero, I think there should be zero moral weight on those who are consensually engaging in sex work. It is not my place to judge the type of employment someone chooses, as long as it's a choice. And that doesn't prohibit me from having very negative views towards those who exploit labor, right? Like
exactly.
I have negative views on people who are exploitive employers in any field, whether it's fast food, whether it's a hospital employing doctors if they did so in an exploitive manner. And again, if someone is employing sex workers in a massage parlor and is doing so in an exploitive way, that is pretty morally repugnant.
Yeah.
Additionally, you have the added hypocrisy of a candidate who is running on traditional family values, running for the People's Party of Canada, is anti-choice, is anti-LGBTQ plus rights,
right,
and yet is doing this behind closed doors, and does a nudge, nudge, wink, wink when asked about it. Right, like he doesn't even deny it. If you talked about how there were some pretty great quotes in here, but like he does, you can tell it's the. I want to deny it so that the police don't visit, but not deny it because I want free advertising. Right?
That's
like he's
right.
very clearly doing a nudge, nudge, wink, wink, going,
100%.
I don't want to completely say that's not what we do because I don't want customers to go, oh, okay, well, this isn't a place I can go for a rub and tug. Right? Like it's, he still wants the free advertising that the article gives. So,
oh boy, does he ever. Oh, geez. Yeah. No. And I mean, it's like you say, like, exploitative work conditions. We don't know the exact working conditions and relationship to the employees that this man has and what he's paying, what they're getting paid. If it's all on the up and up and everybody's getting paid well and they're happy, then I suppose, okay.
Yeah.
But I suspect like often these are Chinese massage parlors, right? Like this is Chinese women. Like even he talks about his wife, and even her English is not so great according to him.
Yeah.
So if the woman he married is speaking not great English, then it's possible that he's exploiting that and taking some advantage of that situation to benefit himself.
And there's issues with him not paying taxes properly. He's previously declared bankruptcy. The bankruptcy thing, that's its own
bankruptcy
issue.
Happens.
Bankruptcy happens. I have a lot more sympathy for when bankruptcy happens to private individuals who get overwhelmed by personal debt rather than business owners who screw over other business partners and are choosing bankruptcy as a business practice rather than running into emergency. Completely separate issue. Bankruptcy. One of my firm beliefs is if you ever declare bankruptcy, your debts get reinstated if you become a millionaire again.
Hey,
Like
I'd be
if you declare
of that.
bankruptcy, great, fine. it's people need an out if people get overwhelmed by their debts. That is understandable. But if you've declared bankruptcy to get out of debts, and in a lot of cases when it's a business owner declaring bankruptcy, the people they're fucking over are other business owners, because banks get first charge, right? The banks aren't losing out on the loans. It's
No,
employees. Actually, we have good laws in Canada that bump employees pretty high up the list.
Okay.
But it's especially other creditors. So if you've purchased a bunch of stuff from another small business and they've invoiced you, that's one of those debts that just goes unpaid if you get
I always think
bankruptcy.
I mean, it's an American example, but on Sopranos, they broke out that sporting goods store.
Yeah.
All the stores, like, he would have got credit for that equipment that they ended up selling on the black market. They would have got screwed.
Okay. Yeah. And again, it's a different thing, but it's one of those pet peeves of mine. If you do that, if you screw over a whole bunch of other small business owners, in cases where there are employees who lose out on, pensions or things like that, and then you later restart a new business and become a millionaire again after having declared bankruptcy and walking away from your previous debts to other private individuals, usually, at that point, I think there should be a staggered process by which those debts come back again.
For sure.
I understand the idea you don't want to punish success, but back to this guy though. Like, I think there's, I think there's a pretty clear path of the type of character this individual has.
He was campaigning as a candidate for the People's Party of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
They actually separated from him. I guess have we mentioned his name? I think it's I can't remember his first name, but because it keeps just saying Wauk.
Yeah. Trevor Wauk.
Trevor Wauk. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't want to mispronounce his name if it's pronounced
Hopefully
differently.
I hope that's correct. But
like, and it's this thing where he's also like, he ran on an anti-immigrant platform, an anti-China platform. He wants to restrict trade with China. He talks all about traditional Western values, reducing the number of immigrants,
European Judeo-Christian beliefs.
Yeah. Eliminating things like the family reunification program, like, and then running a whole bunch of brothels effectively filled with immigrants in what is likely tenuous situations. Yeah. Because in Canada, pretty much anything other than any sort of work permit prohibits sex work. You cannot do sex work on a work permit.
Right.
So it
has to be something else. Right? Yeah.
Even if there are people who are legally have a work permit, they cannot be doing sex work, which puts him in a position of power over them. It's one of the arguments for decriminalization it prohibits people like this from having power over sex workers. It helps cut down on human trafficking rather than increasing it. I get that it's counterintuitive for a lot of people, but
there's a very good reason to say, like you say, decriminalize sex work and push for removal of regulations like that one that stops people from getting a work visa related and doing sex work.
Yep. So anyways, and it's again, you have assholes like this who talk one way and are just exploitive. I don't want to. I definitely don't want to drive his business or drive traffic to his business.
I get the impression
the evidence is pretty clear, and he's him whining about health code officials and whining about people looking into it is pretty disingenuous and
they go into it a little bit too, where he's actually forged receipts with he's used the massage industry code for one person that he was a customer of years ago and put that on his own receipts. And now that could potentially affect the person who he stole that quote unquote that code from.
Like, right? An RMT license?
Yeah. Kind of a license number.
Yeah. So
he's he's doing underhanded stuff, at least as as the evidence is laid out here. So he could definitely face some kind of investigation, I would think.
Yeah, it's you skim over this article, we could probably run you could fill the entire hour just on the shady things this one guy does.
Yeah, that's right.
There's like 10 different, there's 10 different things that you could cover.
Yeah, it's an amazing article. The research, the work put into this, the investigation put into this, it's really, really well done. This is like where journalism is done the best. This kind of stuff, right? Jeff Leo from the CBC, good work. Like, I'll put a link in the show notes. As you say,
put the link up and the image up, because it's there a lot more information than we can cover in just a small segment to do it justice. Yeah,
that's right. Regina Public and Catholic school divisions are taking another look at their resource officers. The scope of the review is yet to be finalized according to the Regina Public Schools, but a look at the SRO program is likely coming. What do you think the odds are they're going to actually remove cops from schools?
Well, I don't want to get my hopes up. I know when I was working on Ted Giletta's campaign, that was one of the things that he was running on is getting them out. That was like a pretty key point for him. So I know I know that is a thing that he is supportive of. My understanding is there is you're dealing with both the city and the school board. Both pretty much need to work together to figure something out here.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think anyone is shocked by either of your or my perspective on this, is that there shouldn't be cops in schools.
No, I suppose not. We've probably made ourselves pretty clear.
Yeah. I don't think we are subtle in our beliefs there, but
this one person from grade 12 student at Miller High School said, to her, the SRO program doesn't make a lot of sense. And if an SRO is at school, they should be known to everybody, but in plain clothes, so that they're not it doesn't intimidate students, is kind of, I guess, what the student is hoping for, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that seems like at least a reasonable change that isn't, if you're not going to remove them.
Yeah.
But
it's, again, you have them there for multiple reasons, and I think all of them are shitty.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a propaganda tool, like, especially, when they come out to elementary schools, they are there to propagandize the children and be like, cops are your friends.
When they're absolutely not.
Yeah. And like, it's this weird thing where you have a number of parents, when it comes to factually accurate information based on science, freaking out that kids are being taught things like biology and evolution or sex education, where they are being taught factually accurate information that is science-based in a science class, and you have parents who are saying that is unacceptable. Kids should be taught these moral lessons at home. The schools shouldn't be teaching morality. Like simple things like, don't let people touch your genitals without your permission. Apparently that is too controversial a thought process for children to be taught. That should be coming from parents. Schools shouldn't enforce that. But these same people think it's okay to send police into schools and teach them that police are your friend. Not,
Right.
not understanding that is also a moral and ethical.
Without irony, they think.
Yeah. And not factually accurate for a large number of students.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So, and then you also have, like, we do not have the same level of school to prison pipeline that the US has, but we certainly still put a lot of marginalized people in jail here.
Yep.
So
yeah, there's an over policing of low income and indigenous areas, and there's a lot. I mean, there's a disproportionate number of indigenous peoples in prisons, as it is, right? Like, and that doesn't come from nowhere.
No, and it starts with kids. Like, you see the same thing with Dojack, right? Like, it's disproportionately indigenous there as well. Yeah. And police being in the schools is where that starts. And it feeds the problem and makes it worse. Right? Because if we approach kids who are running into difficulties in school as being on our side, we are on the same team trying to solve the problem, as opposed to the problem kids being in opposition to a system. Right. Then you bring in police to monitor the problem kids. And
instead of working to, like you say, instead of working to solve the problems, it's applying police. It's the same root problem that's with policing in many areas of society, but it's with kids. So they're even more vulnerable.
Yeah. So it is about time for it to be removed. We don't need authority figures with guns around children. Like,
that's right.
I'm glad they're reviewing it. I think we will maybe talk more once the review comes back. I'm once again glad that Evan Bray is saying mostly the right things. Saying he'll work with the people doing the proposal. Yeah. The idea that we'll be involved, but we're not leading it. Like, good, you shouldn't be. Right. Like, that's. Oh, thank you for at least acknowledging that. I know in a lot of places the police wouldn't. They'd be offended that they're not the ones deciding whether the police should be there or not.
Asking for more work, but also complaining that they're overworked.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember the exact number, and the article doesn't talk about it, but I remember in the lead up to the election, it was something close to $1 million that it cost the Regina School Board. This was the public school board, so I don't know how much it also cost the Catholic school board, or maybe that was the total figure, but it was something like $1 million that gets spent on this program.
So it's not nothing.
It's not nothing. Like, you could have, instead of having 13 cops, maybe let's have 13 more teachers or learning assistants, or pencils, right? Like, we can't afford to have school supplies for our kids, but we can afford 13 cops and paying $1 million out of education budgets to have cops advertise how great they are to children. Money's better spent elsewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Canadian-born baby denied health card in Saskatchewan. This person, Pereira. Pereira. Okay.
I believe.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. I'm terrible with names. So, she asked her first name not be used. She came to Saskatchewan in 2018 from India to go to school. 9 months ago, she gave birth to her son in Regina, and she's currently waiting on her student visa and has a letter of offer to study at the U of S. Yeah. But because she is currently in a state of flux with her status, her Canadian-born son is being denied a health card or health coverage. So they're being charged $60 every time they go to the doctor. They're being charged for various any extra things they need to do. They're being charged for. She took her son to the hospital for trouble breathing and was charged $360. This is okay. So I don't understand why this is happening to her, and it doesn't make any sense to me because, as people might know now, my partner is not originally from Canada, but one of her children, our 2-year-old, was born here. And despite her being in flux with her healthcare at the start of 2020, our 2-year-old still had health coverage. So I don't know why this woman is having to deal with this problem.
Yeah. Well, it seems somehow linked to the again, that her student visa is in the process of being renewed, and there's that in between. And pre-COVID, I know there were a lot of times issues with visas where you couldn't apply, and I don't know which types of visas, but you couldn't apply from within Canada. I had a number of people I worked with who were new Canadians, and we in one of my previous jobs, we hired a lot of people who were here on the postgraduate work permit. So went to university, there's a postgraduate work permit. If you've got a student visa in Canada, you can then get a work permit for the same length of time that your student visa was for. If you were so you go to school, you get a 4-year degree. I think there's a cap on it. So let's say you get a 2-year degree, you can stay for another 2 years on a work permit, a postgraduate work permit. And most cases, that's enough time to apply for the permanent residency card and
Right.
But a lot of times when it was people who were applying for a renewal of the work permit, it involved going back home to do the application. You couldn't apply for the renewal from within Canada. So they would be like I have to fly home for a couple weeks, then apply and then come back. So you have to leave Canada in order to apply to stay in Canada, which I don't know how that works with COVID times, right? Like we don't want to be encouraging people to do that. So I'm wondering if that's one of those, caught.
Yeah, it's certainly a loophole or a mistake somewhere along the line.
I think the child happened to be born in the window where it was during the flux. So I think
it was probably,
where the issue, but it shouldn't
born
matter.
In Canada.
Born in Canada. I just believe in open borders.
Weird.
I think we should have.
Yeah, that's right.
I think we should have
rules are ridiculous.
About 10 times more immigration than we do. I think immigration makes our country stronger. We have human beings are net contributors to a society,
yes,
right? Like we statistically can see that. Again, even if you're, this is one of my arguments so often. It's the moral thing to do, but even if you are an immoral monster and have no sense of ethics and only care about the bottom line, humans create more than they consume. We think of ourselves as consumers, but statistically, if you look at the economic underlying data, human beings create more than we consume. And that is true for virtually everyone, especially over the course of a lifetime.
There's a think tank out there. I can't remember the name of them, but they're actively working towards promoting this idea of 100 million Canadians by 2100 or something like that.
Yeah.
And in order to reach that goal, we absolutely have to have more immigration than we have.
Absolutely.
So, and that would increase our strength as a country by.
It's the people in our first story
that are stopping us. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's, that sounds great. 100 million Canadians would be great, but only if they look like me.
Right.
We don't want them if they don't look like me. I suspect this baby being denied a health card does not look like me.
Yep.
There will be visual elements that make him different from my kids.
Almost certainly.
So this shouldn't be. Again, philosophically, I think this definitely shouldn't be, and we should be encouraging more people to come here in general. But even under the system we have now, even in a system where we have limited immigration based on a point system and we should be, making sure this kid has a health card, and we get to look at our neighbors to the south for, again, the aggregate data on what happens when you deny people preventative health care. Because I don't care how anti-immigrant this province is at times, I still believe if a 10-month-old baby, or I don't know how old the baby is, I got it in my head they were several months, but
9 months.
9 months, okay. If a 9-month-old baby has a severe medical issue and will die without medical intervention, our hospitals will provide that care, even if the mother can't afford it. I have to believe that to be true, which means we didn't, it sounds like she's doing the thing, like the right thing for her child, and paying the $60 a visit and paying the $360 and going and getting the preventative health care anyways, in spite of having to pay for it.
Yeah.
But just imagine someone who couldn't afford that and who doesn't pay the $60 a couple times and the $300 a couple times. And now all of a sudden the child is in need of $10,000 worth of health care because they didn't get the preventative $60 worth of health care. And our emergency rooms that are already taxed to the limit are now, even more overwhelmed. Right. So it seems like a no-brainer. It's once again one of those situations where the moral, ethical thing to do aligns very closely to the fiscally responsible thing to do, and yet the Sask Party is still somehow finding a way of not doing it.
Of course.
So
seems like that happens too often, but
and to be clear, this is probably a bureaucrat or a bureaucratic issue that's causing it currently. But the Sask Party's reluctance to fix it, and fix it not just for the one family, but fix
just
the
to change
system,
the policy. Yeah.
So that this doesn't happen is once again unfortunate.
Darren Hill in Saskatoon City Council is facing resignation and leaves his future on the city council up to his colleagues. So I don't know what's happened since this article. Yeah. I haven't seen any new headlines regarding it. But city councilor Darren Hill was late to file his campaign expense disclosure, and he said that he was diagnosed with COVID-19. He said that he dealt with every single symptom that you've heard of, including brain fog, confusion, and fatigue, and some symptoms still linger. And he's also been dealing with the effects of a traumatic head injury from a vehicle collision in late 2016. And he cited these as reasons for not having his stuff in on time, but left basically the decision up to his fellow city councilors.
Yeah, as you go on, it says a Court of Queen's Bench judge can also just rule that the bylaw was broken through inadvertence or by reason of an honest mistake, in which case he's not required to resign. So a judge can also make a ruling on this.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where he won in a very tight election. He only won by 56 votes. However, the person he beat also didn't file their expense claim on time. They were also late.
Right.
So it's not like you could then say he's disqualified and the runner-up got it or whatever. Like, you'd need to do a new election.
Which costs money too.
Costs money to fill that one seat in a case where both candidates have made the same mistake. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I tend to feel pretty sympathetic towards somebody who has had a brain injury and has gone through an illness. I can see where there might be somebody who would use that as an excuse, but also I don't want to be the one who assumes that he's not being honest when he says this, right?
Honestly, even without the brain injury playing a role, maybe I'm being too lenient. I don't know. But forgetting to file some paperwork he was 2 weeks late on the disclosure. We talked about how
too bad.
Yeah, and we've talked about how ideally this stuff would be disclosed prior to the election. And I think in a circumstance where the default was it being disclosed prior to the election and someone didn't do that,
it would be a different situation.
I'd feel a lot more I'd feel a lot more anxious about this and have a lot more passionate views. Like, I don't know.
I mostly just wanted to cover this because it's something like, I think you might end up with a lot of people who are being, rigid hardliners about the rule, regardless of his situation, because he's maybe not the guy they wanted to support. And I don't know. I don't know that I would agree with that. I don't know his stance on things, but I also don't know his opponent's stance on anything. So,
yeah. While we were talking, I looked up some information because one of the things his name, and again, everything I've said up until this point was said prior to double checking his stance on a couple issues.
Okay.
I remembered his name coming up in Saskatoon's addressing of the conversion therapy ban when they did it, and I was trying to remember if he was that one counselor who voted against the conversion therapy ban. So I was like, oh, okay, am I now defending the one homophobe on city council? In which case, like, that wouldn't make me not think he's a dick, but that again, it seems like a technicality. It was the opposite. His name came up because he was the one like leading the movement. Okay, to have so we ban.
Didn't. So we're not just defending
an
him.
Asshole. I'm defending someone I actually like.
But we're not defending him because we like him. We're defending him before we knew.
Yeah. So again, if you try and look at the spirit of a law, like I think it is important that finances, campaign expenses, and all that be disclosed.
Yeah.
But if it's so, when was the election? The election was November-ish.
Yeah.
So 6 months ago. So whether it's whether you're filing it 4 months after the election or 4 months plus 2 weeks after the election, I don't know how that impacts things, right? Like the city auditor can still review it. They still have the ability to look for discrepancies or unethical behavior within it. And that would be different if that's what happened. Like if it turned out, he filed it 2 weeks late and then they looked at it and found there was a bunch of shady shit going on. That's different, right? That's, you're trying to sneak things under the rug, right?
But then then it's the shady shit that is the issue, not the so much.
Yeah, like again, if it's the 2 weeks, then becomes okay. Were you filing it late in order to try and not get caught? And then is it one of those? It's the cover up, not the crime. But,
right.
But that's not what this is, right? Like it's just he filed something 2 weeks late and may have to. And may have to resign over it. And his expenses still fell well below the limit, right? It was his expenses once filed were $14,977. So basically $15,000 on a limit of $23,000. So he basically came in at 2/3 of what he was allowed to spend.
Right.
Yeah. I hope he gets to stay. I hope the city of Saskatoon doesn't have to pay for a separate election in addition to paying for the election they already just paid for. That's an added cost the city doesn't need when there isn't a strong justification for doing so. And there isn't really any sort of indication that it would result in a different result.
City of Saskatoon falls short on goals to hire more Indigenous and disabled employees. Many categories are far lower than targets set out by the Sask Human Rights Commission.
Yep. And like, this is an important story. It is also a story that is very, very familiar. This is the federal government misses its own targets. Provincial governments miss their own targets. Cities consistently miss their own targets. They set targets that private businesses are supposed to aim to achieve, and then the governments fail to achieve them themselves.
Yeah.
And
I don't want to necessarily, I don't know, Regina may have also missed their targets. I don't know. This is just an article that came up in my feed on Saskatoon. So,
yeah. And again, it comes down to, the counter arguments are always, oh, we should hire the best person. And you're right. We should. Why do you think Indigenous and disabled folk are not the best people?
Right.
Because if we were simply hiring the best people, you would essentially start to see a hiring level that was very similar to the population as a whole. Just if that's just what you would see happening. The other thing that I think doesn't get thought of as much, because we think about, trying to do this for highfalutin reasons. It's better for business to have a diverse workforce. And again, a city isn't a business. But diversity within a workforce allows organizations to have a better understanding of their client base. Again, whether it's private industry or government, you bring in people who have different points of view because of different lived experience. It makes your organization stronger. If I was running a business, I would want to have a diverse workforce, because my employees then can help give me insights into the people I am trying to serve. Right. So if I have Indigenous clients, it helps my organization, again, whether private business or government, to have Indigenous employees, because they can say, hey, I understand, I understand why this policy is here. However, here is how this could impact those who you're not thinking of right now. So I remember when I was a recruiter, I had, diversity targets and all that. And I consistently was one of the, I'm bragging for a moment, I consistently outperformed all of my peers when it came to those targets. But I also was consistently outperforming my peers in recruitment when it came to employee retention of the people I hired, the job performance of the people I hired, because when you look for underrepresented employees, you're more likely to find better employees, because if you take the top, if you take the top 20% of any demographic, and there's demographics who aren't getting selected, you're more likely to have good employees who haven't been swept up by someone else. I had resumes where I would look at and go, this person's freaking incredible, right? Like, this is an amazing employee.
Why are you looking for a job here?
Yeah, right. And then you talk to them, it's like, yeah, no, because, and you can tell, oh shit, you're looking for a job here because your resume didn't even get looked at because people didn't get past the first name. Someone somewhere at the back of their mind saw an Indigenous last name and went,
right.
Not that you can always tell by the name, but that certainly twigs in people's brains. So, anyways, it's unfortunate. There's work that needs to be done. And I think it's better for everyone when you have a more diverse workforce. So,
I think that is a fair statement. Bill introduced to create civilian-led independent agency to investigate serious police incidents. We talked about this when it came out in the budget that they set aside $287,000 for it. So now there's a bill introduced to try and actually put this forward. So I don't know. I didn't see a lot of details in this.
Yeah. Everything I'm seeing looks good.
Yeah.
What we're seeing right now is how the government is explaining it.
Yes.
So we're not actually, I didn't read the bill. I read, a description of it as is reported in the media, and the media is reporting what is told to them by the government, and they dig and look into it too. But I think I think when this gets dissected a little further by stakeholders, I think we'll know more. But yeah, it's a positive sign. Hopefully, it has positive implementation as well.
Yep. Yeah. Opposition NDP leader Ryan Miley said communities of Indigenous people, Black people, and other people of color should be involved and consulted to ensure the makeup, response, and performance reflects their real concerns. And I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah. One of the things I liked is it talked about if a complainant is First Nations or Métis. So if you have an Indigenous complainant, the legislation requires a First Nations or Métis community liaison be appointed. So
yeah, that's very important.
Yes. Again, the proof will be in the pudding. Like we'll see how the implementation goes, and there is a very, very thin, if there is a thin sliver at all, it is a very, very thin sliver of a window to prove that this is what they say it is. I think you have a very large possibility of losing. I'm stumbling over the word. It's not respectability, but or accountability, but
even just trust in that it is what it is, right? Or that they say it is. So
if what ends up happening is all of a sudden this gets implemented and all it does is a rubber stamp for saying the police did nothing wrong. I think you'll lose trust pretty darn quickly.
Yeah.
And there may not even be trust to begin with. Like there may just not be any at all, at which case it'll make it tougher for them to do their job because you will have people from marginalized groups not willing to speak with them because it puts them in danger. Yeah. But hopefully they can take advantage of a thin sliver of, trust that starts off and they make the most of it and it turns into more than just a rubber stamp and they can build up that public trust over time.